Godzilla fans have been eating really well this week. Godzilla Oh No He's a Bad Guy Again went to theaters and it was fantastic. The Russell & Sons Monster Hour has been running on Apple Plus and I'm still really enjoying that too. And Godzilla has reached a new level of Super Saiyan in the Godzilla Kong Buddy Cop movie trailer that came out. So needless to say, this felt like a perfect opportunity to go round 3 of Godzilla monsters and Monsterverse creatures as dragons. It's also got me thinking that after my Pokemon Grand Prix, where I'm doing a bunch of Pokemon episodes a few Mondays in a row, I should do a Godzilla Grand Prix. Not guaranteed yet, but give me some suggestions in the comments for other Godzilla-related videos you'd want to see. And subscribe if you're new here to help this video do better, and to show me that there's more interest in a whole circuit of Godzilla videos. But for now, dragons. Let's go!
Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show.
Something has been awakening the most monstrous dragons of my world. Many beasts that I'd read about and thought to possibly have been only exaggerated legends have been clawing their way out of the earth or appearing in the skies, reacquainting the people of my world with their might. Though some are acting differently from how they did in their tales of old. The first creature to reveal itself in the last week was Rodan, the fire beast. It is a dragon whose body may only stand at a relatively common height of 50 feet from foot to beak, but whose wingspan reaches nearly 250 feet wide. In its legends, it is said to be an incredibly destructive monster, the last of a rare species of dragon that were all killed off by the benevolent, but very territorial legendary beast, Godzilla, who I learned about the last time I read up on these beasts of old. Rodan did battle with this protector of Japan, and while it survived its encounters, it was forced to flee from its homelands. It was rumored to have climbed into a volcano and slumbered in the pools of magma within. This was recently proven to be true, as it emerged from a volcano on an island in Mexico, with its already durable hide now being coated in molten rock. I would have thought this would mean massive destruction was imminent in the surrounding villages. But like the other beasts awakened, this creature surprisingly did not attack anyone. While it has killed some beasts and dragons since emerging, it seems to not be doing this out of malice, but simply for food. It almost seems as though it is biding its time, waiting for something. Even as I traveled to the skies near where it soars and observed it myself, the creature made no move against me or my dragon mount. And while I am highly curious about what it is doing now that it's awakened, I must admit that even if I'm not able to find out, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to safely observe such a miraculous and powerful beast. Now, I went really all in on this drawing, and honestly, Rodan isn't even near the top of my list of favorite Godzilla monsters. I don't have anything against him, it's just the design never really stood out to me. I mean, I love the design in the modern version, the more recent movie he showed up in, where he's got like kind of a magma-y glow running through parts of his wings, and I took inspiration from that. But I'm really happy with how this ended up turning out. It almost reminds me a little bit of my Flygon drawing from my second Pokemon Monster Hunter Fusion episode, where I love the result, but I also look at it and I'm a little like, oh my gosh, this guy needs to calm down. He looks really intense. And I originally wasn't sure if I was going to add, like, arms as well as the wings onto Rodan as a dragon, but I realized if I didn't put the arms in, then it was kinda just gonna be basically regular Rodan, because he's already, I mean, he's like a pterodactyl, but he's already kind of dragon-like. So I put the extra arms in and then the tail to change up the design more. But I think the coolest part of this one is the smoke kind of billowing off his back and the flames coming from his mouth and the streaks from his eyes, and then the speed lines, which I've been, or not, I keep calling them speed lines, not speed lines, like the movement lines that are coming off of him, which I've been adding in more of my drawings lately. All of those things together, I think, really help sell some really epic movement in this piece and just make this look really cool. And I hope you're all as hyped about it as I am. Another mythical creature of old that revealed itself not only to be very much real, but also to still be alive despite stories of it dating back centuries, is the Aptilian King. This is a dragon I've also researched before, who is said to be one of the most skilled fighters of any beast that's existed in my world, and it too has recently emerged, soaring over the skies of South America, allegedly having come from somewhere out in the Pacific Ocean. I suppose it is possible that it came from the island it was once said to have lived on, a mysterious place which is perpetually surrounded by a torrential storm, though I went to find that place some time ago and saw no evidence that the creature was still alive. Luckily, the storm surrounding the isle was no problem for me, as I am able to control the weather of my world, so I merely halted the storm to allow myself in, though I did promptly after learn that the storm was a necessary barrier. While I did not find any evidence of the Reptilian King remaining alive, I did find that there were many creatures on the island that did not exist anywhere else in my world, and some were better off stranded in this place. The storm surrounding these lands ensured that the reptant skycrawlers did not attempt to escape and scourge the mainland villages. These creatures slumber in the caverns beneath the island, but when they awaken, they take to the skies and attack any living thing in sight. They are a breed of amphitheer, meaning a dragon with 2 wings and no legs. They also seem to be very malicious in nature, often killing their prey slowly when on the hunt. While there don't seem to be any more human residents of this isle, I did find evidence of cave paintings depicting the Reptilian King slaying the skycrawlers, suggesting that this ancient king was a protector of the people of these isles before it was taken from its home centuries ago to hunt the monolithic shin gods of Japan. That very event is one that I've long suspected was enacted by a group that I am now allied with, and so after seeing the Reptilian King once again taking to the skies, I decided to go and ask the Slayers of Cursed Predators if past members of their order were indeed responsible. Now honestly, I did this drawing as almost the warm-up drawing for this episode. Like, I still put a lot into it, making sure it ended up looking really cool, because a bunch of people have suggested that I use the skull crawlers from Kong Skull Island, and they also showed up in Godzilla vs. Kong very briefly. People suggested I use them in some regard. And even though this drawing took the least amount of time of all the ones I do in this episode, I honestly think it might actually be my favorite. Like, I really like the slimy sort of texture on it. I was taking some inspiration from my Xenomorph drawings. And I guess I also just really love any creature that's got like a skull head. I mean, I think immediately of my T-Rex demon from my 4th episode of Dinosaurs as Demons. I really love that look, and I'm sure I have a few others that I really like. And just the combination of this creature's head, its texture, the sort of purpley to blue sky in the background, contrasting nicely with it. I just think all in, this thing turned out super cool looking. And that's saying something in an episode that I think everything in it turned out really cool. But let's take a look at the finished result.
Quick interruption here to say that if you want hard copies of the art from this episode, they will be made available as posters on my Teespring store, where I've also got shirts and sweaters and other things like that. Or if you want hard copies of a ton of my different dragons, including a bunch of my Godzilla monsters as dragons, you might want to pick up a copy of Monsters of the Multiverse, my first ever art book which has hundreds of my best dragon, beast, creature, demon designs in it. That'll be linked in the description as well, but for now, back into more Godzilla.
After seeing proof of the Reptilian King's emergence, I headed north to the base of the Slayers of Cursed Predators in the Arctic. They are a group that studies and contains some of the most unusual dragons and beasts of my world, and upon my arrival to the outside of their base, I found that they were dealing with a newly emerged creature themselves. The dragon was a breed of ice wyvern, and somewhat resembled a mole. It has short tendrils emitting from its maw and its back, all of which can emit beams of frigid air that can flash freeze its prey or opponents. It can also shoot even larger and more powerful beams of ice from its mouth to strike foes at a greater distance. While it can stand very low temperatures, as evidenced by where it lives, it is drawn to sources of heat, which the Slayers clearly knew as they were using torches to lure its eyes away from those attempting to prep chains and ropes for its capture. After I assisted them in wrangling the creature, they claimed it was a frigid Varkviern, and that there were no reports of any of this breed being alive in over 300 years. This one crawled its way up through hundreds of feet of solid ice, and when we went down to investigate from where it had emerged, we found that something much larger must have awakened with it. While the Varkviern was only around 25 feet in height, the hole it crawled out of looks as though it had contained a dragon at least 7 times that size. Our current assumption is that another beast of the same caliber as the Aptilian King or Rodan must have awakened and tunneled out of the ice, and a frozen Varkviern had been set free in its escape. I inquired if the Slayers thought there was any chance the creature that had awakened with it was the legendary Godzilla, or perhaps one of its allies or foes from its old tales. Their response was that they hoped it was Godzilla and not one of its ancestors. Now, quick little note that the next drawing is going to be an adaptation of the Godzilla that shows up in Godzilla Minus One, and I went kind of light and vague on the lore a little bit for it because I don't want to spoil anything for people. I know I had to drive an hour to find a theater that was actually showing Godzilla Minus One. It's got a pretty limited release outside of Japan, so I wanted to make sure not to spoil anything for anyone, but technically you could probably infer a few little things in the lore that would be spoilers for the movie, but I highly doubt anything in there would actually ruin or lessen your experience of seeing that movie. But just giving a fair warning there. Anyway, for this guy, the Frost Vark from the new Monarch Legacy of Monsters show, I was super tempted to do Anguirus as a dragon for this episode, because Anguirus is one of my favorite Godzilla monsters and I still haven't done it as a dragon. But I really like the design of this creature, and he almost has a bit of a, icy Anguirus sort of vibe to him anyway. And I knew that if I didn't use the Frost Vark now, I probably never would, because I'm guessing he's not going to end up showing up in anything else in the future. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. It would be really cool if this thing comes back, or a bigger version comes back or something. But I was like, this guy is a really cool design from that new show. I think I gotta go with this. But I essentially just converted the thing into a wyvern. Also, realistically, it would have those spiky things that almost look a little bit pangolin-like all over its body, because, the original version has that. But for my dragon version, I was like, I want a little bit more variety in terms of the textures on this thing. So I added a stomach that was a different texture, added a little bit of fur kind of inspired by polar bears. And as much as I like the original design, I think the variety of textures in mine works a lot better for my art style. The Slayers of Cursed Predators admitted that members of their organization had indeed been the ones back in the day to take the Aptilian King from its home to slay the monolithic shin gods that frequently scourge the Japanese skies, but also they illuminated me further on the history of both Godzilla and the shin gods. They claimed that both creatures were descendants of an even more ancient beast called Gojiron. This creature resembled the great dragon Godzilla, but was not a wyvern, and whose blue flames were infinitely more destructive, with a single beam having the power to cause an explosion that could decimate an entire kingdom with one rapid blow. Worse still, this creature did not have the same benevolent nature as Godzilla. Like the monolithic shin gods descended from it, Gojiron was not a protector of Japan, but a frequent foe to its people. Since the day it emerged from the depths of the ocean, it would kill anything that crossed its path, rarely even eating the creatures and beings it killed, instead biting down on prey and hurling them great distances to their deaths. Even the Slayers of Cursed Predators have not been around long enough to know this creature's exact origins, but some writings suggest that, like the Aptilian King, it was a creature that once lived on a small island near Japan and was territorial and powerful, but only stood at around 20 feet tall. It is believed that some humans that visited that island attempted to kill the creature using a dangerous form of magic that backfired, and instead caused the beast to grow and mutate, and then seek vengeance on the whole species that attempted to do away with it. While humanity tried to kill it on many occasions, there was never any proof that they were completely successful, as it proved very difficult to do lasting damage to. The Slayers now fear that Gojiron may be one of the beasts to awaken, but I personally can't help but maintain a sense of optimism. Even if Gojiron does awaken, perhaps it will do as Rodan has done, and refrain from its past vicious behavior. Perhaps these great dragons have even sensed that in the wider multiverse outside of our world, demons have been sent to invade various dimensions. So maybe these creatures of old are arising to protect our world in case the fight is brought here. I suppose for now, we'll just have to wait and see what other creatures emerge next and what they will do with their incredible might. Now, if you've watched a bunch of my Godzilla episodes in the past, you probably know that I try to push myself with Godzilla drawings. Something about Godzilla just brings out my desire to get better and try new things. And so with this one, after seeing Godzilla Minus One, I was like, I really want to do a drawing of a version of Godzilla actually shooting his atomic breath. Because even with a bunch of my dragons, I very rarely have them actually breathing fire. So I decided that I wanted to make this Godzilla dragon shooting its atomic breath and make it really, really impactful. And a lot of elements of that I think I was successful with. I love how the actual energy, the actual construction of the beam looks, and I was pulling a lot of inspiration from anime sort of 2D kind of effects. I literally looked up like anime laser beams to get inspiration. Because for a lot of the effects like smoke and fire that I've been using in the last few months, I've been pulling inspiration from more animated kinds of sources, largely inspired by how Arcane, the animated League of Legends show, looks. Because even though my aesthetic isn't super similar to that, I'd say that the characters in that show have a similar level of detail to them as the characters I do, and yet the effects like the energy blast, smoke, things like that, are all done in a more 2D flat kind of way, and I think that combination looks awesome. So I've been pulling more inspiration for that, and I think it worked out really nicely on this beam. It's fairly simple looking, but I feel like it works so well. Paired with the fact that after the drawing was finished, I added a few extra speed lines like kind of pointing into the character, and even added a little bit of a radial blur to kind of frame us in towards his head more. But the one knock against this drawing in terms of the impact of this beam is the pose of Godzilla. I think it's a cool pose, but to make this beam feel like it was really like a massive, powerful blow, I should have had Godzilla on the ground, kind of braced with his feet like dug into the ground, or if I wanted him in the air, to have it be less of a swooping kind of pose, more like his wings are, for one thing, a bit bigger and bracing him a little bit more, as if this beam is like pushing him back, it's so powerful. Don't get me wrong, I still love how this thing looks, but I think that would have just pushed it over the edge, emphasized that the power of this blow a little bit more. But all in, I still love this one, and I hope you all do too.
Is this the best Godzilla Dragons episode yet? I honestly can't decide, but I would say this is my most consistent Dragon series quality-wise, I think. If you're new here and you haven't seen the previous Godzilla Monsters as Dragons episodes, I highly recommend going back to them, or you might like my more recent Famous Superheroes as Dragons episode, which I'd put up there as definitely being in my top 3 Dragon videos. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave you with is a quote that I heard this week from a man named Michael A. Singer, who said that the moment in front of you isn't bothering you. You are bothering you about the moment in front of you. There are plenty of situations that happen in our life that can really bother us, but the part of it that's bothering us isn't even so much the thing happening, it's just what we keep telling ourselves about the situation and ruminating on what could go wrong with it. If we can take a step back and stop doing that ruminating, we might realize that the situation isn't actually that bad. I hope that's inspiring, I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday, where I'll be continuing the Pokemon Grand Prix. Goodbye!